Welcome, everyone. Are you all excited? We are having the session on Copilot in Intune, so we're going to learn all the fun facts about this. And I'm Lavanya Lakshman, and here joining me is my crew, Mike Danowski, Zach Dworek, Ravi Ashok, and Amit Godke. With that, let's quickly jump into what we are going to talk about today. Today, we're going to be talking about the overview, some of cool scenarios where Zach and Mike will be demoing some fun stuff for you all to take into, and then we'll talk about some of the SOC scenarios and roll with this. With that, and without much ado, let's jump in and let's talk about how Intune is going to fit into this Copilot world. This is one of my favorite slides where we are going to talk about bringing in the power of all these six products and how we are leveraging Copilot for Security platform to think about the power of the multi-cloud and the multi-platform support and see how Intune can be that awesome force multiplier. We are really not bringing in a new product feature, but we are meeting our admins where they are already. We are understanding what are the various workflows that you have where you're spending a lot of time and how can we simplify the complexity by helping you focus on what's important. Informing what's important, there are four important pillars to think about it. First, information that is available, how do we bring them all together and leverage the power of LLMs behind the scenes is where the summarization is excellent in helping with targeted explanation or doing summarization on a given security incident or even looking at it from an endpoint management where we bring in all the information regarding the devices. This is great. Now, thinking about what kind of questions to ask. How do I ask this question? Do I need to learn a brand new language? Not really. This is where the natural language brings in the power of converting it into KQL behind the scenes, and we help you ask your questions very simply like you're talking to your colleague or your coworker, and we are going to do the magic behind the scenes where we can help you with your troubleshooting scenarios or talking about best practices or even laying out the details for any kind of error codes. Great. Now let's look at how do we help with the creation. There are various settings available in the settings catalog. What kind of policies should I create? What settings to pick? All of these information we are going to help you with where we talk about what is called as the settings insights and also the key settings that you can pick so that we can summarize all of this information, provide you with a draft that you can review. Again, don't forget that you are in the pilot seat. We are just doing the job of being your co-pilot so that you can eventually look at all of these information and act on it by taking the right kind of steps. And also, if you have a troubleshooting scenario, how do you remediate by taking the right kind of action is where manage and automate plays a very key role. Now, what kind of experience are we looking at it from a UX standpoint? There is a standalone experience and there is an embedded experience. My friends here are going to talk to you more about the embedded experience in context of troubleshooting and policy management scenario at greater depth, and also some of the standalone experience that we have and how do we think about it from a cross-product standpoint is what we are going to look at very soon. With that, let me pass it on to Amit, who's going to talk about some of the RBAC scenarios.
Hi, everybody. This is Amit Godke. Thank you, Lavanya, for the great information and the overview of Copilot in Intune. I'm going to talk to you about RBAC and access control because this happens to be one of the things that always pops up when it comes to any of the technology. So the biggest thing to understand and know here is we do not change any of the existing RBAC constructs. The existing RBAC controls in Intune are absolutely honored. If you're an Intune admin, we do not give you any more access than what you already have. What you need to know, though, is you would need to be enabled for Copilot for Security, which means that if you are an Intune admin, you also need to have access through Copilot for Security to be able to leverage the platform and be able to interact with Copilot in Intune. Administrators do not get any more access than they already have. This is very important to understand because a lot of times folks might misunderstand or might have the thinking that we are essentially going to get access to other products. So if you're working with Intune, you need both Intune and Copilot for Security access, and that goes ahead and limits your access to the products and capabilities that you already have. There's a link down there that provides more details about understanding authentication and some of the roles that are required. Please go ahead and visit that to be able to learn more. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Zach.
Thanks, Amit. I'm Zach Dvorak, product manager on the Intune team, and I'm going to take you into the Intune console so that we can see how Copilot and Intune can help with device troubleshooting. I'll start here on the Intune homepage. We've added our Copilot banner to the top that'll walk you through the different ways that Copilot can help you within Intune. I'm going to dive into troubleshooting here, and it's going to take me over to my devices page. From this page, I'll get some information about how Copilot can help me with device issues. It can do things like summarize a device. It'll allow me to compare multiple devices within my tenant, and it can even analyze an error code for me. So let's grab a device and jump in. When I click to the device page, you'll notice up on the action bar, we've added an Explore with Copilot option. If I select this, it's going to open my Copilot flyout here, where I'm able to select a prompt starter to get started. I'll start by getting a summary of this device. This prompt is self-contained. Since I've come to Copilot from a specific device, Copilot already has all of the information that it needs from me to be able to generate a summary. Copilot's going to pull information from throughout Intune and create a summary for me that walks me through hardware information, some settings, policies, even some group information about this device. Once Copilot generates this response, it'll appear right here in the flyout for me where I can reason over it, look through that information, and then ask follow-up questions to continue drilling into this specific device. By pulling all of the information to this one place, I can avoid having to click around through multiple different areas within Intune. All of the information is right here for me to reason over. So quickly looking through the response here, I've gotten my high-level Intune information like the hardware configurations, some information about compliance. I can also see how the device is managed and who it's assigned to. Further down, I'm going to get an overview of group memberships for this device so that I can understand how it's being managed in my environment and where different settings and configurations are assigned from. Next, let's say I'm troubleshooting a problem with this device, and the end user's given me an error code. I want to know more information about that. Using the error code analyzer, I can input an error code, say I got from the end user. I'll press submit, and Copilot will go analyze this error code, pulling information from authoritative and trustworthy sources like Microsoft Docs to be able to give me more information about the potential problem right here in the context of Intune. I don't ever have to leave the portal. Once Copilot generates this response, again, it'll be available in line on the Copilot flyout here directly in my Intune portal. In this case, it looks like the error code actually has two different meanings. It can either be an issue associated with Intune, or it could be something specific to Microsoft Store apps. Copilot's going to give me some context. It looks like we have a situation where, in the context of Intune, the application installation succeeded, but it's no longer being detected on the device. So that could mean maybe the end user uninstalled it, perhaps. Or in the context of a Microsoft Store app, this error code could indicate that there's a problem with the installation behavior being set to system. So this gives me some great information to go on. I can then drill down, ask further questions to try and get to the bottom of what the problem is here. The last thing I'll show is our device comparison. If I select the prompt guide here and select compare with another device, I can input the name or the device ID of a device that I'd like to compare with. And then Copilot is going to ask me to select a comparison type. Let's do configuration profiles. Pressing submit, this information is going to be sent to Copilot. And again, I'm in the context of this device that I started with. I've inputted the name of a second device that I'd like to compare with. So let's say one of these devices, the end user's called into the help desk. They're experiencing some sort of a problem. I need to get to the bottom of it. I know that there's another device in the tenant that's very similar, but that user's not experiencing the problem. I can get Copilot to do a comparison of these two devices and quickly highlight any differences or discrepancies And that'll give me a really good starting point to drill down further to try and figure out what is the difference between these two devices that's causing one of them to behave differently than the other. In this case, I get my response here. And it looks like we have 15 config profiles on the one device and 14 on the other. Copilot's going to quickly look through all of those and summarize where the differences are. Looks like my first device has 2 unique policies. My other device has 1 unique policy. So in just a couple seconds there, this has saved me at least 29 clicks. I would have had to go through all 15 of the configuration profiles for the first device, 14 for the second device, to be able to figure out where the differences lie. Copilot's given me that answer right away. I can now drill into these specific policies, get summaries of them, and try to understand if either of these might be correlated with the issue I'm experiencing, and get that end user's situation resolved as quickly and efficiently as possible. And now that we have some policies that we might want to look closer into, I'm going to kick it over to Mike, who's going to walk you through how Copilot and Intune can help you with policy information.
Thanks, Zach. That was an awesome demonstration of some of the troubleshooting capabilities within Copilot for Security inside of Intune. I'm going to take it from there, and we're going to talk a little bit about policy management and some of the scenarios that we're launching here in our public preview as it pertains to how you can gain insight about settings as well as policies that exist in your tenant by using Copilot. And so I'm going to go right into the demo here and look at this environment. This tenant has been set up with Copilot, so when I sign in and go to the home page, I'm greeted with this beautiful banner up across the top that tells me that I should get started with Copilot. I have this carousel where I can look at either troubleshooting or policy management, but like I said before, we're going to go ahead and jump right into policy management. Now, since I've selected that icon in that banner, it's going to come up with these little tooltips that give me some information on how I can get started with policy management in Copilot. The first scenario that I'm greeted with is this nice blue box that's telling me that I can get help while creating a new policy. In this scenario, we can ask Copilot to give us more information about individual settings, and this is whether we're creating a new policy, modifying an existing policy, or just looking at the summary of a policy. And I'll show you what that looks like. If I click Next, the next policy scenario that's highlighted by this blue box is letting Copilot summarize a policy. So for any of these policies in my environment, I can use Copilot to gain quick understanding of what's in the policy, who it's assigned to, the name, the values, all that kind of good stuff at a glance. So I'm going to say, got it, and I'm going to scroll right down here to this default security policy for this environment. If I go down to the bottom, like normal in this overview page, I can go look at the assignments and the settings and things like that, but I'm actually going to click on this button right up at the top to summarize this policy with Copilot. This is going to pop out over on the right side and generate a summary for this policy. And as Amit covered earlier, this is going to be respecting any RBAC or scope that you have set up in the environment. So if for some reason I'm trying to summarize a policy that I don't have access to, or I don't have read access on a policy and I'm trying to kick off a summary, Copilot's going to come back and say, hey, you actually don't have access to do this. Same with scope tags. The responses come back. It's given me some information about the title of the policy, as well as a table with the settings in the policy and their associated values. This is nice because I have this copy button down here. I can copy out for my own documentation, or if I want to send this in an email and let someone know all the settings and values available in this policy. Down here in this last paragraph, it is letting me know that this policy is assigned to the Woodgrove default workstations, and I also have an exclusion group targeted for this policy. It's telling me that the source is coming directly from Microsoft Intune. Now, I'm going to look at some of the other scope prompts that are available in the policy summarization flow. There's 2 other questions here, and I'm going to ask this bottom one, and I'll talk about what this means. So I'm asking Copilot to describe the impact of this policy on security. And one of the things that's really important when you're dealing with policy and settings in Intune or in any sort of client management is understanding the trade-offs between productivity and security. This is essentially the cornerstone of Intune and making sure that your users are both secure as well as remaining productive. And for the 15,222 settings currently available in Intune, it can get a little bit confusing on what the actual impact of each of these settings are. So with Copilot, it's going to take the list of settings that are currently configured in this policy, and it's going to create a summary for me that tells me for each setting what the potential impact is for security. If I had selected what's the impact on users, it would let me know if there are any productivity impact for any of these settings. One other thing I'll point out here Down at the bottom of this Copilot screen, I have two links. This first Copilot for Security link is going to take me over to this Copilot for Security admin center so I can view any previous sessions that I had or continue interacting with the previous session or even this session. And the one to the right that says Learn More will take me to a page that talks about the privacy and how data is handled between Intune and Copilot for Security. All right, so we're back with the response. And Copilot here has given me quite a large response. I do have quite a few settings in this policy. And it's coming back and saying, for each setting, a little bit of a summary of how the setting should be used and giving me a little bit of additional insight into any potential impact for the setting. Now, this might be something that's obvious, but it might give me some new insight that I hadn't thought about before. For the purpose of this demo, I'm going to highlight this setting 16, Attack Surface Reduction Rules, which blocks untrusted and unsigned processes that run from a USB. The summary here is telling me that this can definitely enhance security by preventing potentially malicious scripts and executables from running from a removable USB drive. However, it could limit the legitimate use of scripts or executables that are unsigned or untrusted. And so this is great advice, something that you'd normally have to go out to docs or talk to someone else and get a second opinion on each of these settings. As you may know or may not know, for attack surface reduction rules, the goal is to limit the attack surface on a device, but this could come with a cost depending on the user's use case for how they're using a device. For me, where maybe I'm not generally using USBs or running things off of USBs, it's totally fine to set this to block. However, if part of my day job is plugging in a USB and running some like test script or something like that, this is definitely going to impact me. So I'm going to try and find a little bit more information about this setting, which is going to take us into our second scenario. I'm going to go into the summary here of this policy under configuration settings. And you'll notice with various settings throughout the console, this small Copilot icon next to them in between the setting name and the tooltip. And this is going to be our second scenario. I'm going to select this, and this will summarize this setting using Copilot. So it's going to tell me more information about this setting. Now, normally our tooltips are generated off of the definition for the settings themselves. They can sometimes give a little bit of information, but they're generally concise and sometimes will even link out to documentation. With this scenario, this Copilot skill is going to look across all Microsoft docs that contain this setting, including Windows documentation and Defender documentation, to try and give me better insight into how the setting works, how it can be set, and what happens if I set it to each value that it supports. This is available today in any settings catalog policy, as well as compliance policy, and many of the endpoint security policies. So our goal, as you've seen us transition over the past few years into making everything the same and uniform across our console, you'll see this Copilot button, this Copilot icon showing up next to settings throughout the console as well. Now it's come back with the advice, and it is telling me that this setting has different ways that it can be set. And it's giving me a summary of what happens when I set it to each value. If you're familiar with attack surface reduction rules, it's also giving me this GUID, which can be used behind the scenes on how the attack surface reduction rules actually function. So this can be helpful, maybe not necessary, but definitely could come in handy if that's what I was looking for. So this is giving me a summary that might help me inform my decision, but there's a couple other things that I'll point out down here in the prompt book that will help me make a decision on how I want to set this. So just like in summarizing a policy, down at the bottom, I can ask Copilot how the setting could affect security or how this could affect users, but there's two new options here as well. This one here in the middle is saying, does Microsoft recommend any particular value for this setting? If I select this prompt, Copilot will look across all of the baselines that we support in Intune and look for this setting to see if there are any matches and any Microsoft recommendation for that particular setting. If I were to select this, it would pick up that it was in the Windows baseline, the Windows security baseline, and tell me that it's recommended to block this. But for the demo today, I'm going to select, has this setting been configured in any other policies? What this is going to do is Copilot will look across the other policies in my environment, looking for this particular setting, and it's going to come back with any policy in which that setting has been previously set. The goal with this workflow is you can quickly get an idea of if this setting is already configured somewhere and give you a pointer to those other policies that may have this setting configured. This way you can appropriately assign the policy or go and investigate those other policies to make sure that you're not creating a conflict with this policy. All right, so we have our response here, and Copilot is telling me that I have 14 policies in this tenant, and here are some of them. So I can go through and see the other policies that have this value set, and it tells me what it's set to. So if this is actually the policy I'm currently looking at, but if one of these other things like the baseline maybe triggers a thought for me to go take a look at that policy and see if I can go fix it, I can select it straight from here, and that's going to take me right over that policy object so that I can either change it, adjust the assignments, or maybe I want to adjust assignment right here in this policy that I'm deploying. I'm going to show one more example here just to show where this is all available. If I go back here to devices, so I'm done with this policy, I got the information that I need, and now I'm reminded that I had a task to go create a new policy for Mac OS. But I am traditionally a Windows admin, so I'm a little bit scared because I don't know a lot of the Mac OS settings. But we're going to jump in and look at this Mac OS compliance policy. This is going to be my Mac OS compliance policy. And we're going to see how we want to define how compliance is evaluated for Mac OS devices in my environment. Now, the first setting I'm greeted with here says require system integrity protection. If I hover over the tooltip, it gives me a little bit of information, but not a whole lot. As a Windows admin, I want to find out more information. So I can select the Copilot icon. And again, in the edit flow of this policy, it's going to go out and ask Copilot to summarize what the setting does. It'll even provide me with some background information on what system integrity protection is, what it does, and what the various values that it can be set to will result in for the end user. All right, so Copilot has come back with a response for me. It's giving me information about what system integrity protection does, how it can be configured, and what the impact is for each possible value. And then because this is a compliance policy, it's adding a little bit more information in there, telling me what's going to happen if a device is compliant or not compliant, and let me know that a device without system integrity protection turned on, if this is required, will be reported as not compliant. Where if I'm either new to compliance or new to Mac management, this is going to help me out a ton. And just like in the other policies and with settings, I can ask all 5 of those questions, see if I'm going to potentially create a conflict, see if I want to see how this is going to impact users' productivity or security, or I can see if there's any recommendation in a baseline. All right, and that is it for the policy management demos for Copilot for Security in Intune. Without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Ravi.
Hey everyone, my name is Ravi, and I'm excited to talk to you a little bit about Intune data and SOC scenarios, or Security Operations Center scenarios. You just saw some great demos from Zach and Mike about how Intune data and Copilot for Security together help enhance workflows for IT admins. The power of this platform and this product is that we can use Intune data to empower other roles and other personas too, and SOC analysts are what I want to touch on briefly. We've added capabilities into Copilot for Security that enable SOC analysts to quickly get critical information that's unique to Intune about devices and users while they're investigating an alert or a potentially suspicious or compromised user. Using Copilot for Security, an IT admin or a SOC analyst can simply ask the platform about information about devices for a user or about a particular device, and Copilot for Security will serve up key pieces of data that can be used in an investigation. Things like the name of the device, when it was enrolled, when the device last checked in, and whether it's compliant with Intune policies. These are all quick at-a-glance pieces of information that can help an analyst make decisions on what to do next about an alert or about a suspicious user. Now, these are also unique to Intune. So using the Copilot for Security platform, we're able to bring this data into the context that a SOC analyst is typically used to when they're doing their investigations. Taking this one step further, we've integrated this data into the Defender portal itself. You'll see on the right here that there is a device summary that Copilot provides when you're investigating a device in the Defender console. We've integrated this Intune data into this view as well, so that when this device summary comes up, data from Intune like what a device actually is it a mobile device or a workstation, who it's owned by, and whether it's compliant with Intune policies, all becomes available right in the context that a SOC analyst is used to when they're doing their work. Now, this is just the start, of course, and we're excited to expand upon this integration with even more Intune data and even more cross-product value through Copilot for Security to empower, again, not just our IT admins, but SOC analysts, security admins, and other roles with the power of this platform. And with that, having demoed some Intune scenarios as well as SOC capabilities, I'd like to hand it back over to Lavanya to take us away.
Hope you all had a great time looking at all the demos and the scenarios and all the cool stuff that we wanted to share with you today. Again, don't forget, you're the pilot. We are playing the role of being your co-pilot. If you have any questions, you know whom to ask. We are always there. wanting to work with you and make this experience awesome. Thank you all for joining us in the session. We'll talk to you very soon.